What's up guys, Houndish here, and today we're going to jump in and talk about weapons in the Menagerie. This time though, we're going to talk about some of the best weapons, and specifically the top roles to look out for, as well as curated masterworks on the new weapons, which do seem to be tied to the heroic version that's coming up on the 25th of June. So we'll break down what they are, perk roles to look out for if you're curious for these weapons, and of course now that we've got a little bit more time with these weapons, we have a better idea of how they perform and the top roles to sort of look for. So guys, if you enjoyed the video, a rating below really helps me out, but otherwise let's jump straight into it. There have been a lot of questions about curated roles for Menagerie, and they are visible on Light GG, and also have masterwork stats associated, so it definitely appears that they're going to be a thing, and we could probably add them to the list of suspected heroic rewards, like the Year 1 class swords. I'll keep you posted on that, but now let's talk about some of the top weapons and perk roles. So, Austringer is the hand cannon, and this is definitely one of the favorites for the Menagerie. You can pick it up with a Rune of Desire, any red rune, and then of course you've got your masterwork slot, and generally range is going to be a pretty good one to go for here. And at base the weapon has pretty good range already, but also high stability and a good magazine size, so it's kind of above average in all the right departments. The main downside really is in PvP, where you do need to hit 3 crits for a kill. Of course, it doesn't make it a bad weapon, but you certainly need a good shot. Otherwise, the weapon is very consistent. If you're a fan of things like Ace of Spades, because of that consistent performance, then you probably enjoy Austringer quite a bit. In terms of roles to look out for, of course, these weapons do have barrels, so generally hammer-forged rifling is going to be a really good option here. There are like 6 or 7 different barrel options that you could get, which of course is the major downside, but small bore, extended barrel, things like that are okay. Hammer-forged rifling, though, in general is going to be the top thing to go for. And again, if you're going for the PvP role, or in general, if you can get accurized rounds in that second slot, then that is really going to bring the range up on this thing, and help it to be one of the more consistent hand cannons in the game by a pretty good shot. But also flared back roll can roll here, so for PvE stuff, that may be kind of your preference. But for those trait slots, this is what we always want to talk about. Really, the standouts are going to be Outlaw, maybe triple tap for PvE stuff if that's your preference. It definitely wouldn't be a bad bonus if you could get the right perks in the other slots. Also, Eye of the Storm is going to be a pretty good option here, especially in PvP because the weapon becomes more accurate and boosts handling as your health gets lower. So, considering we've got a good mag size, in PvP stuff, you could actually trade out Outlaw for something like that. And then in the final slot, Rangefinder is probably the top option for PvP for most people, although you can also get Rampage, so that's a really good all-around bonus. We shouldn't fail to mention that you can also get Opening Shot here as well. And so for PvE stuff, maybe Flared Magwell, Outlaw or Triple Tap, and then Rampage. I'd say that's going to be a pretty fun weapon, but equally in PvP, if you can go hammer-forged rifling, accurized rounds, and then really Outlaw or Eye of the Storm, I feel like they're both really good options, but probably Rangefinder in the last slot if it's consistency that you want. The curated role of this does come with a bonus range stat. It's got corkscrew rifling in the barrel. I don't feel like that's the best option, but then it has tactical mag, Outlaw, and Rangefinder. Kind of wish that was Rampage on the end, man, because that would be a pretty fun PvE role, but the opportunity to earn these weapons is pretty much endless, so that's definitely a positive. There is Imperial Decree. This is the shotgun, definitely one of the better weapons. You can pick it up with a Rune of Wealth and any green rune, and then of course you've got your masterwork stats again, and they'll be different depending on what you want. It is a pretty decent weapon. One of the interesting things is that it's the only aggressive shotgun with trench barrel, but otherwise it doesn't necessarily have the most standout stats, but you can kind of roll it reasonably well. So full choke or rifled barrel are probably pretty good options for PvP. Full choke will give you less pellet spread, so probably my preference, but rifled barrel's pretty good as well. On more of a PvE focused role though, Barrel Shroud is probably pretty good. That increases stability and handling speed. But then accurized rounds can roll out in the second slot, so for PvP, pretty much it's going to be the go-to. Although Tactical Mag will increase the mag size, give you more stability and a faster reload, so for PvE, that, as well as Assault Mag, and that's going to give you a higher rate of fire, which is pretty good, especially if you're going for the Trench Barrel role. Now, I think those would be the kind of premium options. Trait slot 1 can get Slide Shot, and that's probably the absolute best PvP bonus you could get up first. For PvE though, there is Full Auto. Once again, you couple that with Trench Barrel, it could be pretty fun, especially if you also had Assault Mag. That would be a pretty wacky weapon, I think. The Grave Robber is going to be fairly premier option too, especially when you're proccing Trench Barrel. You can also get Swashbuckler as well as Rampage though. And the curated role is Barrel Shroud, Accurized Rounds, Grave Robber, and Trench Barrel. And once again, this one does have a masterwork stat for range. Now, the beloved Sniper is a pretty popular one as well. To pick it up, you'll need a Rune of Jubilation, as well as any red rune. And it's kind of like the LDR from back in the day, so it does have pretty high aim assist in terms of stats. it's a lower zoom sniper, and generally the other stats on the weapon are pretty good as well. I think for barrels, Fluted Barrel is a really good option because it gives you a big kind of handling and stability boost in general. In the magazine, Flared Magwell, I think is a pretty good option. Maybe you go for accurized rounds potentially, but the thing that kind of makes this weapon interesting is that it can roll the new bonus No Distractions. And aiming this weapon for a short period will reduce incoming flinch. Kind of been some mixed feedback about this bonus. Some people seem to really like it, and then others are kind of saying, maybe it's not that good actually. Another less common perk that you can get in the first trade slot would be Mulligan, so maybe something you want to play around with, although I don't think it's mega top tier. So really, unless you were looking for Snapshot, which also rolls in the first trade slot, then No Distractions is probably going to be pretty good. The second slot can get Box Breathe-In. Of course, if you're running No Distractions, that's kind of pretty cool because you have that synergizing element where you do have to aim down your scope for a second to proc the first bonus that you've got anyway, but it can also roll Quick Draw, so you could end up with Snapshot Quick Draw on this thing, which would be pretty cool. Although that last trait slot can also get Moving Target and Rampage, so you may have a bit of a preference for some of those bonuses, but the Curated roll does demonstrate that unique combo of bonuses. We've got Chambered Compensator, Accurized Rounds, No Distractions, and Box Breathe-In. The Masterwork stat will be for reload speed, which is probably the best option really. Another pretty cool weapon that you can pick up would be the Epicurean. I believe I'm saying that correctly. You can pick it up with the Rune of Excess and any green rune. Good thing about this is that it has very high range, but then you can roll out some pretty nice bonuses as well. I would definitely try and get Projection Fuse in that mag slot. It does more damage, which is never a bad thing. And then Particle Repeater and Liquid Coils will give more range or stability, so both of those are pretty good too. I would just avoid going with Accelerated Coils and losing damage on this particular archetype. Trait slot 1 can roll Tap the Trigger, which is actually pretty cool on fusion rifles. Any kind of accuracy improvement is always good. It can also get Under Pressure though, which is a really solid PvP bonus because it's improving stability and accuracy as the mag drops, which is always happening. Feeding Frenzy, however, is also an option in trait slot 1. And the interesting thing that you can do with that is combine it with Kill Clip, and that is a trait slot 2 bonus, so any kind of damage bonus with a fusion rifle is absolutely huge in PvP and PvE, so something to think about there. Although trait slot 2 can get Backup Plan, which is very much going to give this a Plan C kind of feel, and then you have Moving Target as well, which is a pretty top tier bonus. But the Curated roll does come with Hammerforged Rifling, Accelerated Coils, which I'm really not sure about, but then you get Tap the Trigger and Backup Plan. So on the most part, you've got a pretty good roll there. It'll be interesting to see how Accelerated Coils gets on with those other bonuses. But a weapon that I think's pretty good would be the Fixed Odds Machine Gun. When I say pretty good, I actually just kind of like the feel of this weapon. And to get the machine gun, you will need a Rune of Ambition and any blue rune. It isn't necessarily extraordinary in, any way, really good range on it, but otherwise the stats are, fairly kind of typical. We don't have many reference points because this is one of the very few high impact machine guns in Destiny 2. And so I think ricochet rounds for PvP purposes is going to be really pretty good, especially with the range that the weapon already has. But you also have high caliber rounds, which I think is a pretty nasty PvE bonus and really helps to stagger those tankier targets especially. And in trait slot 1 and 2, you can actually combo Feeding Frenzy and Rampage, which is part of the Curated roll. So that's a pretty fun pairing right there. And otherwise, you do have stuff like Field Prep, No Distractions, Quick Draw, Rangefinder, a lot of bonuses that don't necessarily feel super exciting. And so the Curated roll is actually a pretty good option. Hammerforged Rifling, Armor Piercing Rounds, Feeding Frenzy, and Rampage. The stat bonus is for Handling, which is definitely one of the weakest stats on the weapon anyway, so I don't think that's all too bad. Otherwise, you do have the Drang. That's an alright sidearm. The Drang Baroque combination is Rune of Pride and any purple rune in the second slot. If you curated perks on this one, it comes with Full Bore, Accurized Rounds, Quick Draw, and Rampage, which honestly is probably one of the absolute best rolls here. The only other things that it can do which are pretty interesting is that it can get full auto trigger system, so you can have that in trait slot 1 and then something like Rampage in trait 2. The curated roll of the Canis Mini Tool is Fluted Barrel, Light Mag, Eye of the Storm, and Underdog. It can, however, roll out with Surrounded, so that actually might be a pretty fun one with Surrounded Spec or something. And that's in trait slot 2. Trait slot 1 gets Dynamic Sway Reduction, Moving Target, Eye of the Storm, or Slideways, so not super exhilarating in that first trait slot, but Surrounded on an SMG is definitely an interesting element of the weapon, and if I was going to try and get a specific roll, I'd probably go for a Surrounded one just to play around with it. Of course, the rune combination for the Mini Tool is Rune of the Beast and any purple rune. But for now, guys, that is going to summarize the video for today. So just wanted to take a bit of a better look at some of those weapons, the curated roles, what can make them interesting, and some of the best roles to actually go for. So I hope the video has been useful. Let us know any awesome roles of these weapons that you've picked up down below. I think this season, especially when you couple it with the raid and some of the exotics, I think this season in general in terms of the legendary loot pool is definitely more interesting than what we saw last season, so that's a positive. But if you guys are new around here, be sure to hit subscribe if you want to keep up to date with everything related to the game. Otherwise, thank you for tuning in, and whatever you get up to, I hope you have an awesome day.